Most movies teach you how to spot a villain. They give you signs to watch for, a theme song, or a look, or possibly a moment where the mask slips and you're told, very clearly, this is the person you're meant to oppose. From that point on, the story becomes a process of confirmation. You wait for the relief that comes when they're finally removed. Studio Ghibli does something stranger. It doesn't ask you to identify who's evil. It asks you to notice when something stops knowing its limits. And that's why Ghibli villains linger. They don't feel like obstacles placed in the story to overcome. They feel like people who kept walking in the same direction long after the road should have bent. And once you notice that, something unsettling starts to happen. You realize Ghibli almost never writes evil as intent. He writes evil as imbalance. It's like a fear that hardens, care that forgets how to listen, certainty that stops sharing space with anything else. This is why you don't leave these films feeling entirely triumphant. You leave them feeling thoughtful, sometimes uneasy or implicated. A lot of stories are built around the question, who's the bad guy? Ghibli quietly asks something else instead. What happens when someone believes they're right for too long? You can see this immediately in how rarely Ghibli gives you a clean target. Even when a character is framed as an antagonist, the films resist flattening them. They don't rush to justify them, but they don't rush to condemn them either. Instead, they let you sit inside their logic. You understand what they're protecting. You understand why they won't stop. And that understanding is what makes them dangerous. Because danger, in these stories, doesn't come from hatred. It comes from devotion without restraint. And once you start watching Ghibli through that lens, something becomes clear. These characters aren't written to be defeated. They're written to be recognized, to show us how easily good intentions can curdle when they refuse reflection. How care, once rigid, can become indistinguishable from harm. That pattern repeats again and again across Ghibli's films. It changes shape, it changes tone. Sometimes it's loud and violent. Sometimes it's quiet and administrative. And sometimes it barely looks like villainy at all. But it always begins the same way, with a value that stopped bending. Take Lady Eboshi. She's often treated as the template for Ghibli villains, and for good reason. She builds, she protects, she rescues people society discarded, and she gives them work, dignity, and loyalty. Irontown exists because she refused to accept the world as it handed it to her. In another story, she absolutely would have been the hero. And that's the point. Eboshi doesn't destroy the forest because she hates it. She destroys it because she believes survival demands it. Progress demands it. Responsibility demands it. Violence becomes a tool she knows how to use, not something she enjoys. When conflict appears, her instinct isn't cruelty. It's a feeling of certainty. And that's what makes her frightening. Ghibli keeps returning to this idea. The moment someone believes their mission exempts them from reflection, they stop being a force for good. Eboshi doesn't lose because she's punished. She loses something far more important. She's forced to see the cost of her worldview, and only then does change become possible. What's important here is that the film never asks you to stop understanding her. It asks you to notice where understanding stops being enough. Her care is real. Her compassion is genuine. But it's directional. It moves forward without checking who it's crushing along the way. And once you see that, you realize Eboshi isn't an exemption. She's a foundation. The same imbalance appears again and again, just shaped by different fears. Sometimes that fear comes from survival inside violent systems. Kushana is born into a world where softness is a liability, so her armor isn't symbolic, it's learned. She respects pacifism, she even admires it, but she believes bloodshed is her destiny, and it's not because she wants it, but because she doesn't believe the world allows anything else. And where Eboshi believes in progress, Kushana believes in endurance. Both are shaped by damage, and both are wrong in ways that make sense. And Ghibli refuses to make that comfortable, because when survival becomes the only value left standing, everything else becomes expendable. Mercy turns into risk, hesitation becomes weakness, and reflection becomes a luxury no one believes they can afford. These characters don't wake up choosing harm. They wake up choosing not to stop. Other times, the imbalance shifts away from care entirely. Muska is what happens when power detaches from responsibility. He isn't protecting anyone. He isn't building anything meant to last. His claim to authority comes from entitlement, bloodline destiny, the belief that technology exists to be wielded but not stewarded. Ghibli never writes villains like him, which is why he stands out so sharply. Muska isn't shaped by a system he's trying to survive. He is the system, stripped of obligation. There's no tension between values here, no competing goods, just extraction, control without grounding, and the film is very clear about what happens to that kind of power. It doesn't collapse in a blaze of justice. It erases itself. Laputa doesn't fall because Muska is defeated. It falls because power with no restraint cannot remain coherent. And then just as quickly, Ghibli pulls back. Not every imbalance needs to be catastrophic to be dangerous. Donald Curtis doesn't want domination. He wants applause. Conflict is a stage, and violence is a career move. He's loud where Porco is weary, ambitious where Porco is resigned. And Ghibli deflates him gently, almost affectionately, because his threat is hollow. Ego burns itself out without needing to be crushed. That range matters, because Ghibli understands something most stories avoid. Villainy isn't one thing. It's not a single moral failure you can isolate and destroy. It's a spectrum of breakdowns in relationship, with people, with land, with power, and with love. And sometimes it isn't personal at all. Sometimes it's institutional. Yubaba doesn't terrorize through chaos. She terrorizes through contracts, names, memory, and labor. She runs a functional system, and that's what makes it terrifying. The bathhouse works. People get paid. Guests are served, and inside that efficiency, identity disappears. Control doesn't look like violence. It looks like paperwork. And Ghibli makes sure you notice how familiar that feels. Madame Solomon sits higher up the same ladder. Where Yubaba manages workers, Solomon manages war itself. Polished, elegant, and watching. Her cruelty is quiet, and it's expressed by stripping others of power and calling it order. She doesn't need to raise her voice. She already owns the room. And then Ghibli brings the camera in closer. Haru doesn't rule a kingdom. She rules a house. Her villainy comes from fear of what she can't understand. She doesn't see people. She sees pests. Containment feels justified when curiosity curdles into paranoia. And suddenly the threat isn't mythic. It's domestic. Familiar. Uncomfortably small. Nanny goes even further. No magic, no spectacle, just neglect, control, and emotional cruelty wrapped in the language of care. Ghibli is willing to say something very few animated films will. Harm doesn't require monsters. Sometimes it feels like a caretaker's face. And then there's Fujimoto. He might be the clearest example of what Ghibli is really doing with all of this. Fujimoto isn't evil. He's afraid. Afraid of imbalance. Afraid of loss. Afraid of humanity. His love for Ponyo turned into rules, surveillance, or restriction. He wants to protect the world by freezing it in place. And the film gently insists on a different truth. Love that refuses to trust becomes another form of harm. Across all these characters, Ghibli keeps making the same argument from different angles. Villains aren't defined by how much damage they cause. They're defined by what they refuse to release, like control, certainty, fear, identity, power, and love. The moment these things stop sharing space with humility, the world begins to fracture.